Alright guys, it's time to answer the question of what happened to After the Flash Wintertide. So if you haven't noticed yet, the community of ATF has changed. You can mainly tell it's changed by listening to all the old ATF 7 players that are still around, who like the old environment, complain about how much worse this game is, and specifically how they hate the new culture. And you can find them just about anywhere, on the Discord, on YouTube, and even in my comments. Although one important thing to note that will come into play later is that most of these old players don't really play the game anymore. So then, how did we get here? And where did everyone go? Well, culture war. ATF is the next battleground for the internet culture war. But instead of just leaving it there, let me go through some of the evidence I've collected to try to paint the full picture.
I just woke up in a fucking steaming mood, yeah? Because I live in a shithole! I hate the fucking place! It's full of dickheads!
Now, the first question is, why didn't this happen sooner? Well, it's because the old ATF 7 community was very good at keeping people out. To put it simply, when playing the game, it was a sink or swim kind of environment, something pointed out by Neurobandit.
The CRP environment repelled softer people from the franchise.
If you played ATF 7, then you probably had your fair share of CRP encounters. Looking back at it, the world building and rules were kind of built on it, which is something for another video. But the point is, since CRP was a common occurrence that you couldn't escape from and would get in the way of roleplay, especially if you didn't ask for it, you kind of only had two options: leave, or if you can't beat them, join them. So how did so many new players come into ATF? Well, it's because cracks formed in the Iron Curtain during the early years of ATF 8, and that curtain would eventually fall, leading to a flood of new players coming in and staying that couldn't be stopped. And you can see this transition phase in the early years of ATF 8, when it still largely had its ATF 7 community that kept its same culture as highlighted by the My Guy video and him addressing toxic CRP.
To the point where today you can no longer engage in any combat scenario without being enwrapped in a 30-minute OOC argument regarding the most nerdy shit like ballistics or weapon caliber.
But you can also see the shift in the ATF community at the same time with the I'd vibe here nothing RP.
However, its roleplay has evolved significantly. People gather around the player hub of the day and resign themselves to engaging in dull, small talk roleplay.
And this gave us a blend of the two cultures, really giving us the worst of both worlds.
Replaced by journeys made outside of Bardstown that only ended engaging in mindless combat roleplay with feral mutants or raiders.
And the interesting thing about this is that this flood of new players happened from top to bottom, because if you look at a majority of the staff currently, that being both mods and developers, you'll notice a large majority of them are from 2020 and up, and that's not even talking about when they became mods. That's just when they joined the server. You can also tell there was a swap in the higher-ups by looking at the ATF 7 story channel and seeing all the people that aren't anything anymore. So now, with new people in power and in the fan base, changes could be made to the game and its culture that would only push more old ATF players out, as we see with a lot of the older players not really being fans of the new lore and the story of ATF 8. And this only further pushed the falling of the Iron Curtain, which would leave significant gaps in the community for new people to fill in. So then the question remains, why did people leave in the first place? It starts with the catastrophic launch of After the Flash Wintertide. You've probably heard it before or experienced it, but the release and development was lackluster. It failed to deliver in a timely manner, it failed to keep people's attention, and it failed at an anticipated launch. To put it into perspective, After the Flash Mirage existed for about 4 years, released in 2018, and the story was over by 2021, with the beta and alpha development combined only taking months, and the actual story was only 3 years long. Compare that to After the Flash Wintertide, where the official release of the game took over 1 whole year, with North Island finally taking the game out of beta, and the story only just started in 2023. Now, again, for most games, a 1-year development time isn't crazy, but when you compare it to just how fast-paced ATF development time typically is, you can see how this feels like an eternity. However, that doesn't mean that the development time wasn't unjustified. There was actually a good reason for it taking this long compared to before. This is just talking about taking it out of beta and not the story starting. I'm pretty sure it took so long because nobody had any idea what they were actually doing, and that 1 year was just scramble time. But anyway, unlike ATF 7, this was a game entirely built from the ground up, and on top of that was only built by 2 coders. And I think this upgrade was absolutely needed. I've gone every now and again back to ATF 7 itself and other games that use its systems, and I just can't comprehend how I played that game with its crusty, clunky, outdated system. And I am just so grateful we have what we have now. Anyway, with that, we had to wait a while for this game to even be playable, as vital mechanics were created one by one, and even then, we had to wait for the content for those systems to be released. So with so much downtime, people simply just got bored, and so most people left. There was also more factors to this, like the change in timeline, and even in style that made people less enthused about the game. Or, they grew up and left for outside reasons, but I assume that the slow start of ATF 8 was just encouragement to move on. So with a gap in the player base, of course new people would come in and fill that gap. And that leaves us with what we have today. The main reason why I even got this idea all started from that "Is ATF 7 better than ATF 8" comparison video, which I took down because halfway through writing the second script, I realized that it was just all over the place nonsense. Now, why does that matter? Because it's the origins to this video. Because while writing the second script, I started getting into comparing the cultures of ATF 7 and 8, specifically looking at 2 videos. One from Nerve Bandit, which I have referenced many times in this video, and one from Sparkling Fishy, before they crashed out and deleted all their videos, and then started posting again. But there was 2 specific moments from both their videos that made me start looking at all of this.
The CRP environment repelled soft for people. 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 Soft for people.
Your hands don't look like this while you're eating your lunch. You must be a liberal sissy.
You want my gun? Come kiss me for it.
Nice haircut! Did you get that haircut from the liberal store?
That's nice, liberal. I see they got you working the easy shift. Not me. I'm going in for my 36-hour shift at the ball-crushing factory.
This moment right here was the aha moment. Well, technically it was more from the Sparkling Fishy video, where they had screenshots of people calling new ATF players sensitive and getting cancelled, which was in a video about why they were leaving ATF 8, which is gone but sort of back in a segment of their new video about why they're leaving ATF 8, but it misses those specific clips. Anyway, once I saw this and looked around, everything just started falling into place. After the Flash Wintertide is now the next front line in the culture war, and I believe that this is completely deconstructive to After the Flash Wintertide, drawing these lines to divide the community when this has nothing to do with the game itself. But there's nothing really to do about it. I think it's clear that these groups just can't get along, and yeah, that's kind of it. I don't really know what else to say, because there's nothing to really resolve this. It doesn't feel like these people can't or won't coexist. So it really only feels like this can get resolved when one side wins and becomes the loud majority, which looks like it's happening as ATF 7 players are saying their piece and leaving. So I guess just let me know what you think about my theory about what happened to the ATF community. Maybe provide some examples or evidence that support or debunk it. Also, I was a little skimpy on some of the details, saying how I'll talk about them later in a different video, which is because there are some pieces of evidence I want to hold back from showing right now to use in a much bigger and much more important video. So expect that coming out probably after a different video I've got, and yeah, I'll see y'all around.